Hey everyone, welcome back. Icon here. Thanks so much for checking out another episode of Esports Analysis. Today we are on board with ENVOY as he and the Chicago Huntsmen go to battle against the Minnesota ROKKR. So this is like the second or third map. I did watch the ones before this and they were really close. ENVOY ends up going off on this one, so that's why we're in here with him. I think he goes like 2-1. I think he's like 34 and 17, somewhere in there. So Chicago ends up winning this fairly big, and we're going to break down why exactly that happens. So right now it's the battle for spawns for P2, which is why ENVOY is nowhere near the hill. That's in the middle of the map. If you look right above ENVOY's head, there is a mini map up there where I can kind of explain to you what's going on. So right now they're on P1, and the next one's going to be P2. So as ENVOY comes up off of spawn right here, you can see that they're now spawning out. So what he was trying to do is he went over to the right-hand flank over here, and he was trying to patrol this area over here, because if they don't get that locked down, then that means as it rotates back to P2, they're going to be spawning out, which is exactly why you watched ENVOY spawn right towards P5, which is on the opposite side of the map. So at this point in time, they were flipped. Now it's a battle of trying to get back to that side of the map so that they can regain spawns and get the most amount of time out of this hill as they possibly can. So I will say so far that this is a really nice job from Chicago of at least being pushed up this far. Because if you're not quite sure how it works on this map, where if you have the very back spawn of P2, then your enemies are going to be spawning mid-map. Whereas if you're able to push up right where ENVOY is right now, then you're going to have the left side spawn and your enemy is going to have the right side spawn. So just to draw this, just to make sure that we can see it a little bit better, ENVOY pushed up this right-hand side. And while he was doing that, what happens is when that becomes contested, that means Minnesota is going to spawn on this side. So essentially, it's going to be a jailbreak from each side trying to get into the hill. And normally that causes a lot of this time to go contested. Now, that was a really nice job of Chicago of breaking this current hill, and they were able to get the majority of this time. And essentially why they were able to break it is because they were able to win the gun battles inside of P2. And then when you push out to that right side, now all of a sudden you have the other side where you were spawning at, and you have control of their side. So if you have both, if you have control of both sides of P2, now all of a sudden the enemy is going to be spawning out. And it looks like they were also successful of flipping spawns for P3. So this is something, I'm not quite sure what's going on, but this isn't something that you normally see from Minnesota. But as I was explaining what was happening in P2, essentially what teams like to do now is as they leave P2, you might have seen this on my channel a couple times, but if you haven't, essentially what they'll do, the quickest way to get to P3 is over here on the right-hand side. But rather than do that, what a lot of teams have been doing is they've been pushing out the spawns behind P5. If they're able to push out those spawns behind P5, then that gives you a much easier way to both lock down the time for P3, and eventually once it gets to P5, now all of a sudden you have the spawns to get the majority of the time there also. This is a really nice flank route there from ENVOY. So as ENVOY comes up off of spawn, let me go ahead and just kind of show you exactly what was happening there. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to pause this, I'm going to draw right above his head for just a moment, but Chicago is now spawning right there. So ENVOY was at P3, but he went mid-map, and he was able to secure a kill here. Now, most teams, when they have control of P5 and they're rotating towards P4 trying to get some contesting, they'll go over here by stone or by coil, over here through woods trying to attack. And essentially what you just saw ENVOY do is you saw him jump up mid-map, and he just quickly tried to pinch them. And this can be good, this can be a little bit risky, but if it plans out perfectly, then you can go ahead, you can pinch, you can get the rest of this time in P4, and Minnesota is going to be spawning back here in the opposite corner. Now, the only way that that doesn't really work out is if ENVOY was to push up through mid-map, and while he's right here, there's nobody back by P3, because that's the last thing that you would want, right? You wouldn't want Minnesota spawning on this side, because then you're basically giving up a route to get to P5. So you just have to be a little bit careful on how you approach things there. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to hit play again. And I like what's happening right now. ENVOY's being a little bit patient. He's not just running into that current hard point and dying. He is kind of waiting for his teammates, but as we're seeing in the background that some of the most important things right now for Chicago is holding down that mid route and that left-hand flank, because the last thing you'd want to do is push too hard at P4, not have somebody locking down the left-hand side of the map, and then giving up that left-hand side of the map, and then no longer having control of P5. So they're doing a nice job here of like one person going forward, right? So it's not like everybody was standing there inside of P4. ENVOY was just kind of sitting back, watching the cross, providing support to Formal, who was on the left-hand side of the map. And while he was doing that, there was somebody inside the hill contesting. And then when that person died, then ENVOY went ahead and pushed up, and he was then able to contest or try to get time inside of P4. So they did a nice job of just being patient, just being spread out, and this is why ENVOY is so good. I mean, there's 25 seconds that have come off of this hard point, and he's single-handedly, he's the one that's locking down this left-hand side of the map, right? That's his 4th kill in a row just looking at boxes over here. So he does have support, right? He does have somebody helping him over there, but there was 5 and almost 6 in a row of him locking down that left-hand side of the map. And now that there's 14 seconds left, they maxed out the entire 60 on this side. So again, if you're a Minnesota fan, that's a nice job there because it looked like they had almost pushed out P2. So you can see right now where ENVOY came up. That means that they don't have P2 pushed out just yet, but they're very close to it. So we'll see what happens. As these spawns come in, it's kind of up in the air because you see ENVOY shooting someone from behind. It's really hard to see without the arrows, see exactly what's happening. Now that we just got a little bit of an idea there, it does look like there was somebody on the right-hand side of the map. So there's a battle going on that right-hand side. The best thing about scrims is that we can go ahead, we can turn up the volume, and we can actually hear what they're saying and what they're talking about. So this is normally the point in the video where I do that. So let's go ahead. Let's turn this up a little bit so you guys get an idea in terms of what they're talking about and what their plan is moving forward.
Perfect.
Gonna be 8 on team, right?
They're spawning right side. They're spawning deep right.
I got one mid.
They're gonna hit you. They're gonna hit right.
Yo, he's on the steps,
Yeah, I'm on green train.
Mid right.
I'm staying down, he's on the stairs.
If you're Minnesota, this is about as bad as it gets, right? Because if you're not able to flip here and you give up the majority of those 60 points to Chicago in this next hard point, it's going to be really hard to come back from.
My bad.
2-4 left. 2-4 left on me. I'm
Open train dead. I'm
AC left. Top AC.
2 AC.
All right, so that's a fantastic push there by Minnesota. They were able to come off of P1, push out that left-hand side, and essentially now they have, this is the exact opposite of what was happening on that first set of rotations. They have the left-hand side of the hill, and Chicago is spawning out on the right-hand side.
When he can rotate.
I'm still
Let's see, window.
We're up by low.
Top.
And more Shelly interaction.
Really dead.
One's top AC.
Window assault.
We're gonna spawn back AC now.
Slow the game down again. Slow the game down.
Ah, shit. Yeah, they spawned water
Dang.
down, guys. They spawned water down.
So yeah, it looks like the rest of that time, the last 15 seconds or so, are going to end up going to Chicago. So as you watching the mini-map in the top left-hand corner, you're just going to see a lot of those blue arrows just focusing over towards P3.
Run on me.
Water. Got me.
Go in front.
Make sure I can't left in front. Make sure I
I
can't.
smacked that.
Force is completely open. I gotta
get
pick
through
it
the
up
front.
now.
Yeah, I'm trying to. Keep it.
So now one thing I want to point out, now that you're the team that's set up on P3, you really do want to watch that flank on the right-hand side because you don't want to get pushed out over towards Woods. If you get pushed out over towards Woods, then all of a sudden you're not going to have spawns for P5 either. So even though Chicago is set up really well to end up winning this game, it could turn quickly if they gave up spawns and gave up time on P3.
I don't see vents.
Back up, phone try, back up.
Should be dead.
Yeah, another one for time.
Yeah, another one pushing
Time dead.
More close.
Yeah. I don't see him.
Green
One hill.
I killed the guy. No, last guy's lockers. I killed the guy.
Let's see where ENVOY comes up off of spawn. He should be back towards P5. Yeah, so this is exactly what you want. Even though you're not going to win it on P3, and you probably won't win it on P4, you just want to make sure that you're set up. You still have those spawns so that when it does finally rotate back to P5, if it goes that far, you're basically guaranteed the win.
He could be up middle. I got one.
Last rock. Right. One shot dead.
I'm
Copy
going
that, got two. Another one here, got me open.
Bathroom's dead.
4 or 5, all 5.
I know, I'm down on time. They have trophies.
I'm maining over you guys.
He's on 4.
So they just got all 5 down. Looks like they need 6 more seconds. We'll see if they're able to clutch up.
Mid tracks.
Rock. I'm done.
Rock just, okay.
Okay,
time.
No back
They
track.
just
No back tracks.
broke like that?
In the crack.
He's On Rock. There's two
They
there.
went up,
Two.
they went
One
up
on
Rock.
Rock. He's on
That's a really nice job of Minnesota. Even though they're probably not going to come back and win, right? That's a nice job of, in that clutch situation, if they don't get a team kill there, then they're going to end up losing on P4. However, looks like
Every push, just stay
they
down.
got 2 seconds, and that'll do it. So
I think
that war, I don't know. That was just so dominant by Chicago. They did a really nice job of being in position when the hard points went from one side to the other. They were basically always set up, and the very few that they weren't set up on, they were able to break it really quickly. So overall, that was a pretty dominant performance from Chicago, but that's not how all the scrims went during, or all the maps went during this scrim. I do just want to point out that ENVOY was 34-17. I mean, everybody. Formal was 28-12. Seth was 28-19. Everybody had a really nice game. Now, maybe host had something to do with it, because if this was LAN, you probably wouldn't see such a discrepancy there. But that's a heck of a performance from Chicago, and we'll see if that carries over here throughout the week as we watch more scrims. So with that, guys, real quick, I do just want to put out an announcement that I am now streaming on twitch.tv. So the link will be down below. It's twitch.tv/IconNationYT. So if you want to go ahead, jump over there, give me a follow. I will be over there every single day for probably the next 3 or 4 weeks. So we normally go live around 8 p.m. So go over there, give me a follow. I appreciate you guys all watching me stream on YouTube, but I wanted to go ahead and just separate those things a little bit. So head on over, please leave a follow on Twitch and tune in during those night caps. If you're new around here, make sure you hit that subscribe button. Leave a like before you head on your way. If you have any comments whatsoever, put them down below, and I'll catch you in my next episode. We'll see you.